You know, when you're at school and the teacher asks everyone, what is it that you really want to be when you grow up? Well, when I was really small, I would say maybe like 5 or 6 years old, and the teacher asked us that, and all the kids were like, fireman, policeman, nurse, vet. I said Jedi, and because I said Jedi, my parents had to be called in, and I had to be sat down, and they had to say to me, no, Daniel, you can't be a Jedi, and it's really important that you know that. But as I got a little bit older, after I'd gone through the phase of, I want to go to the moon, and I'm gonna be like an inventor. After that, the first real thing that I wanted to be was a writer. I remember the first stories that I wrote on like an old hand-me-down Packard Bell PC that was even old at the time, and they were shameless Edgar Allan Poe clones. I remember there was this one called The Painter, and it was about a painter who was he couldn't paint anymore because he didn't have a muse, and so he stole a woman and locked her in his room so he could finish this beautiful painting. And that's the kind of stuff that I was writing, and honestly, it was fun because back then, I really wasn't writing for any reason. I wasn't writing for publication. I wasn't writing even to enter a competition or even to show anyone. It was just fun. And then at some point during my late teens, this idea of publication, becoming a writer, maybe when I was like 16 or so, it started to invade my mind, and I started to think, oh, that would be a really cool thing to be. And at that point, almost instantly, writing stopped being fun. Writing became a sort of hurdle to writerdom, The logic went something like, well, I want to be a writer, so I suppose I'll have to write then. Now, maybe this isn't so unusual. I mean, a writer is not such a bad thing to want to be. Do doctors really want to study medicine for 8 years, or do they want just the sort of security and comfort and status that comes with being a doctor? I don't know. But what I know is, as soon as this idea of publication came to me, writing became a sort of stressful, doubt-ridden, anxiety-rich experience that was full of long periods of inactivity and self-doubt and, honestly, self-loathing. I am 33 years old now, and I have a big stack of rejection. Well, I don't. I have a big metaphorical stack of rejection letters to my name, though not as many as I should have, but more on that later. And honestly, it says in the script here that writing is much easier for me now, and honestly, that's not really true. I wrote that because, here we are. I'm supposed to be coming at you, giving you this advice, so I felt like it needed to come from this place of authority, but maybe it's better that it comes from a place of honesty and understanding. So, yeah, we'll scrap that. But in any case, I have put together these tips, and here are 5 things that I think we all need to do in order to sort of reclaim that joy of writing. So step 1, I think, is that you have to be okay with the fact that it might never happen for you. I think Patrick Rothfuss said, I say I think because I've searched for this video, I vividly remember him saying this in a video, and I've looked and I can't find it. So maybe it's someone who may or may not have been Patrick Rothfuss said that when he was writing his novel, which took a long time, he had to have a conversation with himself where he was like, look, Patrick, if this thing was never going to take off, if no one was ever going to buy it, if no one other than your friends and family would ever read it, would you still finish it? And he said that the answer just has to be yes, or you just can't do it. I think that's probably right, because it might never happen. Success is skill, yes, and hard work and all of those things, but it's also luck. I think I think success for me is like when luck meets that preparation and that hard work, and that's when things happen. So that luck element might never come into your life, and so you have to basically act as though it never will. Because the thing is, right, if you say to yourself, right, this story, this is the one, this is the one that's gonna kind of break through for me, and you pin all your hopes on it, then that's just a tremendous amount of pressure to put on yourself, and writing is hard enough anyway. So I think if you're even going to begin to reclaim some of that joy that you might once have felt, um, this has to be a starting point, right? Step 2, I think, is to finish stuff. Finish anything. You know, you start a short story, finish it. If you start a novel, finish it. You know, I don't know how many chapter 1s I have of unfinished novels sitting in a folder on my computer, but it's a lot. It's 20 something. It's so many that I thought maybe I could like release an ebook or something that was just called Chapter 1, that was just like the first chapters of all these novels that I'm never going to finish. And the thing about that is it doesn't feel good, you know, because if we're saying that we might never be published, then part of the goal is to just kind of write for fun and to create things. And it doesn't feel good, like, never to create things. And I think what causes this is the perfectionist in you, or at least the perfectionist in me. I'm a crazy perfectionist. I'll have an idea one day that I'll think is great, and I'll wake up the next morning and I'll think it's the most awful idea. I think the thing to remember is that the problem with ideas is that they're cheap, but they're also perfect. You know, they're paintings and they're beautiful, and when they're there in your mind's eye, you know, they could hang up alongside the Titians and the Veroneses in the Academia gallery, you know. But then when you start to write them down, they're sort of revolting, deformed, sorry little creatures, and not at all anything like you imagined. And then before long, as you're looking at this awful lump of deformity, to quote Richard III, another shining idea flits into place, and you're like, oh, that's nice, and then you follow that, and the cycle repeats. If you're a writer, you know this. This is the kind of thing we have to avoid. So I think the way that we avoid that is by finishing things. There's that Glengarry Glen Ross quote, "Always be closing," and I think that is as true for writers as it is for real estate salesmen. You know, you need to finish these things and give yourself that sense of accomplishment, and learn what it is like to finish something and how that feels, because then maybe, just maybe, it'll be a little bit easier next time. Okay, so I think that number 3 would be don't chase market trends. If you read as much speculative fiction as I do every month, you might think to yourself, gee, there sure is a huge number of fiction at the moment about robots with body dysmorphia. So maybe if I wrote something like that, people would take notice of me. But this is I think, a really bad idea for several reasons. The main one, I think, is that this sort of thinking won't allow you to do your best work, and it makes the outcome of the writing, again, the priority over the writing itself. It makes publication God, and publication is a cruel God. It is an ambivalent and cold and unforgiving God. What has happened to my face? And then even if you do make a sale, like, is that the kind of work that you want out in the world? Do you want cynical, derivative work to be the thing that represents you? Will you ever write something that means something to you? Like, where do you even go from there? Can you be fulfilled as a writer if you do that? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I don't think so. For me, at least, there's a certain satisfaction in writing the stuff that you want to write, even if no one reads it. And if someone does want to read it, then it's ever the more satisfying. Maybe. I don't know. I also don't have that experience. I just want to interject and say, I don't know how this camera works, and I've set it to some auto settings because I thought that that would be easier, but I'm seeing on the viewfinder that my face is going from very pale to very brown, and I don't know why that is, and I'm too deep into this video to fix it, so I know, you know that I know, so we can just leave it there, and we'll try and fix it next time. Tip number 4 is to chase rejections and not sales. I read an article by a woman, I believe was called Kim Liao or something. Maybe I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong, but I think that was her name. And she said rather than make publication your goal, you should make rejections your goal. And this advice really did change how I thought about writing and just made things a lot easier. You know, she says, like, aim to get 100 rejections in a year, because you turn this negative into a positive and into something that you are achieving rather than something that's happening to you. When I read this kind of blew my mind, and it also made me think of a Kurt Vonnegut thing where he was like, you know, you should just write a short story every week because it's impossible to write 52 bad short stories in a row. And so these two things sort of coalesced in my mind, and I was like, yeah, that's got to be the answer, hasn't it? We know that that's the answer to everything. That's the answer to YouTube. That's the answer to anything you want to do. You just do something for a long time, you get better at it, and you know, the more consistent you are, the more likely you are to reach an audience. We kind of just know, you know, that's like a fact of life. But I don't know, it's just such a great thought, you know. It's like, oh, another rejection, no problem. I'll add that one to the list. Woo! And it's a further acknowledgement of what I was talking about earlier, and that, like, ideas, you know, they're beautiful, but they are cheap, you know, and you can just think of 100 of them, and you can write them, and you can finish them, and you can strive to write enough of them that you just happen across a good one time, and then maybe, you know, good things might happen. I think this final tip is just like a continuation of that, really, and that's to take your wins where you can get them. You are on a long and lonely road, and I know that because I'm on it too. It's not going to be exactly the same, but I'm willing to bet that it's going to be similar enough in the ballpark. So yeah, take those wins. You know, did you receive an honorable mention in a short story competition? Win. Great big win. Take it. Did you receive like a personalized rejection with some feedback on it rather than like a standard form rejection? That's a win. Did you read one of your old short stories and scoff at the grammatical errors and the bits of the story that didn't quite work, and now you know exactly how you change them? That's a win. Did you finish that damn story that was so hard and that you started to hate halfway through, and you wondered like why you were ever so stupid to think that this was a good idea in the first place? Did you finish it anyway? That's a win. And so you need to take these wins and use them as fuel to keep pushing forward and keep on writing and keep on getting better and try to enjoy it. That's my advice that I struggle to take myself sometimes, but I just wanted to say, maybe, you know, I don't know whether you need to hear this or not today, but you, published or not, are a writer, and I hope that you always will be, and I hope sincerely that you find some joy in it.